A losing war shifted the moment. The human princess stepped forward. The galaxy stretched endlessly, dotted with lights of distant planets, some familiar, most unknown. But the beauty of it did little to ease the weight in her chest. For months now, humanity had been losing the war. Each day brought news of another world falling, another colony surrendered, and another fleet retreating in silence. The air on the orbital station felt heavier than ever, filled with tension and quiet despair. Her advisors moved about the command center, voices low but urgent. Hushed debates bounced from one officer to another, each arguing over strategy, each convinced that the next plan could somehow stop what already seemed inevitable. Ships lined the docking bays, some damaged, others barely functioning, yet all still required maintenance, fuel, and hope that seemed harder and harder to come by. The princess leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on her hands. She was young, still learning the weight of responsibility that her title demanded, but she had learned quickly. Being a princess in these times meant more than ceremonial duties. It meant understanding the fragile line between hope and surrender, and she refused to give up. "Not yet, Your Highness," a voice interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see Commander Raylan approaching, his uniform precise, his expression a mixture of frustration and respect. "The latest reports from the colonies, they've lost contact with 3 more outposts. We may need to consider evacuation protocols." The princess shook her head slowly. "Evacuation is surrender dressed as prudence," she said softly. Her voice, though quiet, carried a weight that made even the seasoned commander pause. "And I will not ask our people to surrender while there is still a way forward." Raylan hesitated. He had served under the royal family for decades and knew the princess's determination well. Yet he also knew the statistics. Humanity was outnumbered, outgunned, and overstretched. Every day without a decisive victory allowed the alien coalition to tighten its grip on human space. Still, he nodded, not out of agreement but respect. "Understood, Your Highness, but we must be practical as well as brave." The princess rose from her seat and walked to the central console. Her hands hovered over the holographic display, tracing the paths of human fleets and alien patrols across the galaxy. The lines moved, showing losses, failed defenses, and shrinking territories. It was discouraging, yes, but also revealing. Patterns could be found even in chaos, and she believed that humanity's strength was not in its weapons but in its minds, in its people. She looked at the map, eyes sharp, noticing small details that others might overlook. Supply routes the aliens assumed were abandoned, communications left unencrypted, planets rich in resources yet untouched. Every failure the humans had suffered was also a lesson, and every lesson was a potential advantage if approached with creativity. Raylan watched her silently, seeing something in her posture and gaze that reminded him of the late king, her father. He had once said that leadership was not about controlling every move, but about seeing the possibilities others could not. The princess had inherited that same clarity, and perhaps, he thought, that clarity was exactly what humanity needed now. "Your Highness," another voice interjected, soft but insistent. It was Lieutenant Myra, the youngest officer on the station, still learning the ropes but eager to prove herself. "I know it seems hopeless, but maybe we can find a way to turn this around, even if only a little." The princess smiled faintly, a small warmth in the midst of the cold metallic room. "Myra, hope is not enough, but ingenuity can change the outcome, and humanity has it in abundance. I've seen it in every colony, every settlement, every individual who refused to give up despite everything. That is what we must rely on." The young lieutenant nodded, inspired but uncertain. The princess understood. Her own confidence had taken years to build, and even now it was tested every hour. She needed to show her people that losing was not the same as being defeated, that courage and clever thinking could reshape the path ahead. She moved toward the large observation window again, her reflection merging with the stars beyond. Her thoughts drifted to the people she had sworn to protect. Scientists discovering new technologies on forgotten planets, farmers maintaining their crops under alien occupation, children learning and playing despite the distant sounds of conflict. Humanity was fragile, yes, but resilient in ways the aliens could never understand. Their strength was in their adaptability, their creativity, and their unbreakable spirit. A soft chime echoed through the command center, signaling an incoming communication. The princess turned to see a holographic projection flicker to life, showing the face of an elder scientist from a remote research colony. The colony had remained quiet for weeks, leaving the princess and her advisors worried. Yet here they were, their expression tense but determined. "Your Highness," the scientist began, "we have made a discovery that may help shift the course of the war. It is not a weapon, not in the traditional sense, but a method to reorganize our fleets and resources more efficiently. It requires coordination and ingenuity, but it could allow us to defend colonies without direct confrontation." The princess's eyes lit up with interest. This was exactly the kind of thinking she had hoped to find, a solution that leveraged human creativity rather than relying on brute force. "Show me," she said simply, her tone firm but encouraging. Over the next hour, the scientist detailed a plan that involved clever use of communication networks, automated resource distribution, and subtle maneuvers designed to outwit the alien forces without direct battle. It was complex, yes, and required cooperation across planets and colonies, but it played to the strengths of humanity: intelligence, adaptability, and collaboration. Raylan raised an eyebrow, skepticism evident. "It's ambitious, Your Highness, and risky. If the aliens detect these moves—" "They won't," the princess interrupted gently. "Not if we are creative, not if we act in ways they do not expect. That is the point. We are not their enemies to fight with weapons. They are our rivals in strategy, and strategy is where humans excel." The command center fell silent for a moment, the weight of her words settling over everyone. Then, slowly, nods began to appear, tentative but growing. The princess had not demanded obedience or blind loyalty. She had offered hope rooted in action, not fantasy. And that was enough to stir the first spark of determination in a room filled with doubt. As the hours passed, the princess worked alongside the officers and scientists, tracing routes, marking colonies, and devising communication channels. She moved among them with a quiet authority, listening to ideas, correcting assumptions, and encouraging new approaches. Every suggestion was considered, every mind valued, and in this collaborative effort, a sense of unity began to grow. She paused briefly to watch the stars again, the lights of distant human colonies glimmering faintly against the black void. Each dot represented lives, dreams, and hope. She felt the responsibility pressing on her shoulders, yes, but also a surge of determination. If humans could survive on the harshest planets, adapt to environments no one else could, and think beyond conventional rules, then perhaps this war, too, could be shifted, not through weapons, but through the ingenuity and courage of her people. Myra approached again, notebook in hand. "Your Highness, how do we even start coordinating all this? The colonies are spread so far and the aliens are always watching." The princess smiled warmly. "We start with small steps, Myra. One colony at a time, one plan at a time. Humans have survived for centuries in impossible situations. We will find the way forward just as they always have, and we will do it together." The young officer nodded, inspired by the confidence and clarity of the princess. Others around the room began to feel it too, a quiet determination spreading like a ripple. For the first time in weeks, the command center was filled not with despair, but with energy and focus. As night fell over the distant worlds, the princess remained at the observation deck, her thoughts drifting between stars and strategy. She knew the challenges ahead were immense. She knew the odds were still against humanity. But she also knew something else, that humans, when faced with impossible circumstances, never truly gave up. They adapted, they invented, they persevered. And with her people behind her, she believed that even in the darkest moments, they could find a way to shine. The first step was simple: to refuse to accept defeat as inevitable. The next steps would require ingenuity, coordination, and courage, but the princess had no doubt that her people were capable. She looked down at the holographic map one last time before leaving the observation deck. Lines of fleets, colonies, and supply routes glimmered faintly, awaiting the spark that would ignite a new strategy. That spark, she knew, would come from humanity itself. And she would be the one to guide it forward. For the first time in a long time, the princess allowed herself to imagine a future where humanity could turn the tide, not with weapons or brute force, but with ideas, unity, and resilience. And in that moment, a small but powerful certainty took root. The losing war could still be shifted, and the moment that shift began was the moment she chose to step forward. The human princess walked through the corridors of the orbital station with calm determination. Around her, officers and engineers moved quickly, their faces reflecting the same tension that had filled the command center for weeks. Yet there was a new energy in the air, a sense of purpose that had been absent during the long months of losses. The princess felt it too, a quiet spark that grew stronger with each step she took. She entered the central planning room, where large holographic displays of human colonies and fleet movements floated in the air. Scientists and strategists were already gathered, their eyes focused on data streams and planetary simulations. The princess approached the largest table, placing her hands lightly on its smooth surface. The holographic maps responded, shifting to show detailed logistics, trade routes, and communication networks across the galaxy. "Your Highness," Commander Raylan said, coming to her side, "we've received preliminary responses from several colonies. They're willing to participate, but they are cautious. Many have suffered losses and are unsure they can coordinate without support." The princess nodded thoughtfully. "Caution is natural," she said softly, "but we will show them that cooperation is possible, that we can support each other, even from a distance, and that their efforts matter." She turned to face the team of scientists, her eyes bright with focus. "We will start with small projects, one colony at a time. We will test our ideas, learn from mistakes, and grow stronger with every step. Innovation comes from trying, failing, and trying again. Humanity has always been resilient because we do not fear failure, we learn from it." A young scientist, his face pale from days without rest, raised his voice slightly. "Your Highness, the communications network is fragile. Many colonies do not have secure channels. If we try to coordinate too much, we risk confusion, and the alien fleet is always listening." The princess studied the holographic map carefully. Lines representing communication paths flickered, showing weak signals and interruptions. "Then we adapt," she said simply. "We do not need perfection at first. We need action. If some colonies cannot connect immediately, we find alternative routes. If some messages are intercepted, we use coded patterns, creativity in language, signals in light. The aliens expect us to act like they do, but humans do not follow their expectations. We create our own." Murmurs of agreement spread through the room. The princess had a way of speaking that made people believe in their own abilities, as if the ideas had come from them, yet guided by her clarity and vision. Slowly, the team began to organize, dividing tasks, assigning communication links, and planning small tests. Hours passed as the princess moved among them, guiding discussions, asking questions, and suggesting ways to simplify complex problems. She encouraged scientists to think like explorers, engineers to see possibilities in old equipment, and officers to focus on strategy over confrontation. Every obstacle became a puzzle to solve, every limitation a challenge to overcome. As the first small projects were implemented, the princess visited the colonies that had agreed to participate. Using secure communication channels, she connected with local leaders, farmers, teachers, and engineers, asking questions about resources, obstacles, and ideas. Each colony had its own unique strengths, whether fertile lands, skilled technicians, or natural energy sources. The princess made sure every contribution was valued, no matter how small, and encouraged local solutions that fit the environment. In one agricultural colony, she spoke with a group of farmers who had been struggling with supply shortages. "Your knowledge of the land is as important as any fleet," she told them. "We will use what you already know. If we plan together, you will not be alone, and your work will support many others across the galaxy." The farmers, inspired by her words, began to devise methods to share their crops more efficiently, using storage techniques and transport schedules that minimized waste. What had once been a desperate struggle for survival turned into a project of ingenuity and cooperation. In another colony, a team of engineers worked on repairing old satellites to strengthen communication lines. The princess asked questions about power sources, signal patterns, and maintenance schedules. She encouraged the engineers to use parts in creative ways, sometimes repurposing broken components to serve new functions. Slowly, their network began to stabilize, and even small improvements made a significant difference in coordinating distant colonies. Back on the orbital station, Commander Raylan watched the progress with a mixture of relief and astonishment. "I have served in many battles," he thought, "but I have never seen leadership like this. Not through weapons, but through guidance, encouragement, and ideas. She is teaching humanity to win without fighting, and it is working." The princess spent long hours reviewing reports, analyzing outcomes, and adjusting plans. She noticed patterns in the alien fleet's behavior, subtle tendencies that could be predicted. They relied on linear thinking, assuming humans would respond in predictable ways. The princess, however, encouraged unpredictability. Humans could adapt, improvise, and find alternative routes that the aliens would not anticipate. One day, as she reviewed the latest reports, a young officer rushed in with urgent news. "Your Highness, one of the colonies has successfully rerouted its supplies using the methods you suggested. They avoided disruption entirely, and the local population has enough resources for the next 2 months." The princess smiled, feeling a quiet satisfaction. "Excellent," she said. "This is proof that creativity works. It is not just the plan, it is the people who carry it out. They see what needs to be done and they act. That is humanity's greatest strength." Word of these successes spread quickly among the human colonies. Messages of encouragement traveled through secure channels, showing how one community's solution could inspire another. Slowly, morale began to rise. People who had once felt abandoned or hopeless began to feel that their efforts mattered. Even small victories, like coordinating food supplies or repairing communication systems, became symbols of hope. In the command center, the princess gathered the team once more. "Every improvement, every successful adaptation, is a step towards shifting the course of this war," she said. "The aliens cannot take our creativity, our cooperation, or our determination. These are uniquely human strengths. And as long as we believe in ourselves and work together, we can change the outcome." The team worked late into the night, building on the successes of the day. Plans were revised, communication channels strengthened, and logistical routes optimized. Each new idea, no matter how small, was tested and refined. The princess moved among them, listening, guiding, and offering encouragement when doubt appeared. Even as the alien coalition continued its expansion, the human colonies were no longer passive. They had become active participants in a strategy that relied on ingenuity, not confrontation. Each successful adjustment, each clever reroute, Each small innovation contributed to a growing network of resilience. The princess often returned to the observation deck, looking out at the galaxy, reflecting on the progress. The stars seemed brighter now, not because the situation had changed, but because the people she led were beginning to shine. Humanity was awakening to its potential. The network of colonies, once disconnected and fearful, was beginning to operate as a single organism, guided by creativity, collaboration, and trust. One evening, as she watched a distant colony successfully implement a new energy distribution system, she felt a sense of quiet triumph. It was not victory, not yet, but a shift, a movement from despair toward possibility. The princess understood that the war would not be won in a single day, but in moments like this, when human determination and ingenuity made the impossible achievable. She turned to Commander Raylan, who stood beside her, his usual stoic expression softened by respect and admiration. "We are beginning to see change," she said simply. "Yes, Your Highness," he replied, "and it is remarkable to witness. The colonies, they are no longer waiting for orders. They are acting. They are creating solutions." The princess nodded. "That is exactly what we needed. Humanity's strength has never been in numbers or firepower. It has always been in our ability to think, to adapt, to work together. Now, the moment has come for that strength to shine." Days turned into weeks, and the efforts of the princess and her team began to yield results that were both practical and inspiring. Colonies shared resources more efficiently, communication networks became more reliable, and human settlements learned to anticipate and adapt to challenges without direct confrontation. The alien coalition, expecting humans to act in predictable ways, found their assumptions continually challenged. At the orbital station, the princess reviewed the latest reports with satisfaction. Each line of data, each update from the colonies, reflected the growing coordination and creativity of her people. She knew there would still be difficulties ahead, but she also knew that humanity had discovered a power that could not be measured in fleets or weapons. It was a power of thought, of collaboration, and of resilience. As night fell across the galaxy, she once again returned to the observation deck. Stars twinkled in the distance, each one representing not just a planet but a human community rising to meet the challenge. The princess felt a quiet confidence growing within her. The war had not ended and challenges would continue, but humanity was no longer passive. It was alive with ideas, courage, and the willingness to act. And in that moment, the princess understood something fundamental. The losing war had begun to shift, not through confrontation, but through the brilliance, ingenuity, and determination of humans willing to step forward and create solutions where none seemed possible. She smiled softly, feeling the spark of hope take root and spread, knowing that this was only the beginning of a new chapter, one in which humanity's creativity could change the course of history itself. The human princess stood at the central control platform of the orbital station, her eyes moving over the complex web of holographic projections. Each dot represented a colony, a fleet, or a supply route, and lines connected them in patterns that only someone with her understanding could fully comprehend. Weeks of preparation had brought them to this moment, the first full implementation of her strategy to coordinate human colonies across the galaxy. Commander Raylan and the senior officers hovered nearby, their expressions a mix of anticipation and cautious hope. For months, they had watched the princess guide the colonies through small successes, rerouting supplies, repairing communication networks, and finding solutions to logistical problems that had once seemed insurmountable. Now they were ready to see her plan unfold on a much larger scale. The princess turned to face them. "This is not just about following orders," she said firmly, her voice calm and steady. "This is about thinking. Each colony, each fleet, each individual has the power to make decisions that matter. We are connected, yes, but we are also independent. I trust each of you to act wisely, to think creatively, and to support one another. That is how we will succeed." The officers nodded, understanding that this was not a traditional battle plan. There would be no fleets clashing in open combat, no weapons fired across space. Instead, success would come from coordination, ingenuity, and the ability to anticipate and outthink the alien coalition. The princess had turned the concept of war into a game of strategy, one where human creativity was the greatest advantage. In the communications hub, Lieutenant Myra monitored multiple channels at once, coordinating messages between colonies. Her face was tense but focused, and she felt a thrill of purpose she had never experienced before. For the first time, the colonies were acting not as isolated outposts, but as parts of a living network. Supplies moved efficiently, messages flowed clearly, and people were empowered to take initiative within the framework the princess had provided. The first test of the full strategy began with a minor disruption, a simulated shortage of energy in a cluster of nearby colonies. It was designed to see how quickly the system could adapt without direct intervention from the station. Within hours, the colonies had already begun to collaborate. One planet shared its energy reserves, another redirected unused power from its infrastructure, and a third created temporary storage units to balance the distribution. The princess watched the progress closely, a small smile forming. "Look at that," she said quietly. "Each colony is solving problems on its own, yet together. That is what makes humanity strong. That is what the aliens cannot predict or control." Raylan nodded, his eyes reflecting both relief and admiration. "It's remarkable. They are learning to act independently but in harmony, and all without firing a single shot." Over the following days, the network expanded. The princess personally connected with colony leaders, offering advice and encouragement while leaving them free to implement solutions suited to their environments. In one arid world, engineers devised a system to capture and recycle water efficiently, allowing agriculture to continue despite limited resources. In another mining colony, workers created automated carts to move materials safely between settlements, freeing up manpower for other projects. The alien coalition, expecting humans to respond predictably, was caught off guard. They anticipated a slow, disorganized resistance, but instead, they observed colonies acting in ways that were impossible to forecast. Supply chains were maintained, communication networks strengthened, and resources were optimized in a continuous flow. The humans were not fighting with weapons. They were winning through resilience and ingenuity. The princess moved from station to station, sometimes through holographic links, sometimes visiting planets directly. Wherever she went, her presence inspired action. People who had once felt powerless began to realize that their ideas and skills were valuable. The colonies were no longer waiting for orders. They were thinking, planning, and executing. One evening, the princess arrived at a colony that had faced repeated supply shortages. She walked through the settlement, observing the new systems in place: water filtration units, shared storage warehouses, and a network of messengers who relayed information quickly and efficiently. Children played safely in communal areas, and families worked together to maintain their new infrastructure. She spoke with the colony leader, a woman named Lyra, who had initially doubted the feasibility of the princess's plan. "Your Highness," Lyra said, "we didn't know it would work at first, but now we see the results. Our people are confident and our systems are stable. The network feels alive and we are proud to be a part of it." The princess smiled, feeling the truth of Lyra's words. "It is your strength, Lyra. The strategy is only as strong as the people who make it real. You and your community have proven that humanity can rise above the challenges, not by force, but by thinking, creating, and working together." Back on the orbital station, Reports continued to pour in from every corner of human space. Each successful adaptation inspired new solutions. A planet with a natural resource shortage developed an innovative trade system with nearby worlds. A fleet previously unable to support distant colonies learned to operate as mobile support units, delivering supplies and information efficiently. The network became a living organism, each part learning from the others and growing stronger with every success. The princess often stayed at the observation deck late into the night, watching the galaxy glow with activity. The colonies, once scattered and isolated, now operated as a single, connected force. She could see the subtle changes in their routines, the way humans were finding solutions that even she had not imagined. It was proof of what she had always believed. Humans were strongest when they were creative, cooperative, and free to act on their intelligence. One day, Lieutenant Myra approached the princess with a report that caused her to pause. "Your Highness, one of the colonies has developed a new method for transporting essential supplies using environmental energy sources. They can now move goods without relying on traditional fuel or machinery." The princess studied the report carefully, her eyes lighting up. "That is exactly the kind of innovation we hoped for," she said. "They have taken the principles we discussed and expanded on them. This is what makes the network resilient. Every idea, every adaptation strengthens the whole system." The news spread quickly, and soon, other colonies began experimenting with similar innovations. Solar-powered transport systems, automated distribution networks, and creative communication methods became common. Each success built confidence and pride, reinforcing the sense that humanity was capable of overcoming any obstacle through ingenuity. The alien coalition, observing these developments, grew increasingly frustrated. Their intelligence suggested that humans would react slowly, following predictable patterns. Instead, the colonies adapted dynamically, changing strategies in real time. The aliens could not anticipate human creativity, and every new development challenged their assumptions. In the command center, the princess addressed her officers. "Do not underestimate the value of small victories. Each improvement, each successful adaptation, is a step toward shifting the balance. We may not have their numbers or their technology, but we have something they cannot predict: human ingenuity, courage, and collaboration. That is our greatest weapon." Her words were not mere motivation, they were guidance. Officers and scientists alike began to think differently, seeking solutions that relied on human skill and creativity rather than confrontation. They redesigned logistical routes, improved communication protocols, and developed new ways to manage resources efficiently. Each idea was tested, refined, and shared across the network, creating a feedback loop of learning and improvement. Weeks passed, and the full implementation of the princess's strategy began to show its effects. Colonies that had once struggled were now thriving. Communication networks were robust and reliable, supply chains were efficient, and people worked together with renewed confidence. The alien coalition's predictions were consistently proven wrong, as humans responded in ways that were innovative, coordinated, and unpredictable. The princess visited a research colony that had been working on energy efficiency improvements. Scientists there had developed a system to store excess power during low-demand periods and redirect it where it was needed most. The project was entirely self-directed, inspired by principles the princess had shared but executed with creativity unique to the colony. She spoke to the lead scientist, a young man named Taran. "You have taken the idea and made it your own," she said. "This is exactly what we needed. Innovation comes from people like you, willing to think differently, to experiment, and to improve continuously." Taran smiled, pride evident in his expression. "Your Highness, it was your guidance that gave us the confidence to try. We believed it was possible because you believed in us." The princess nodded. understanding that leadership was not about dictating every action but empowering others to act. Humanity's strength was not centralized in her decisions alone. It was distributed across every colony, every individual, and every idea that emerged from collaboration. As she returned to the orbital station, she reflected on the progress made. The strategy was working. Humanity was no longer a passive participant in a losing war. It was an active, dynamic force. Each colony's creativity and problem-solving ability made the network stronger, more resilient, and more capable of withstanding challenges. Late that night, she stood on the observation deck, gazing at the stars. Each point of light represented a human community rising to meet the challenges of the galaxy. The princess felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that her people were beginning to see the power they held within themselves. The network was no longer just a plan. It was a living, breathing testament to human ingenuity. She turned to Commander Raylan, who had joined her silently. "The colonies are acting as one," she said. "They are no longer waiting for direction. They are creating solutions, learning from each other and growing stronger every day. This is what it means to lead, Raylan. Not through fear, not through force, but through guidance, trust, and inspiration." Raylan nodded, his eyes reflecting both admiration and hope. "It is remarkable, Your Highness. Humanity has always been strong, but now they are realizing their full potential. The aliens cannot predict or control this. We have begun to shift the course of the war." The princess smiled softly, feeling the weight of responsibility mixed with the thrill of progress. She knew there were challenges ahead, that obstacles would continue to arise, and that patience and perseverance would be required. Yet she also knew that humanity had discovered something invaluable: the power of creativity, cooperation, and independent thinking. As the hours passed, reports continued to arrive from colonies across human space. Each one contained stories of innovation, adaptation, and collaboration. Supplies moved efficiently, communication flowed reliably, and communities found ways to thrive despite scarcity and distance. The network had become self-sustaining, guided by principles the princess had instilled, yet alive with the unique solutions of each colony. And in that moment, the princess understood something profound. Humanity was no longer simply surviving. Humanity was learning to thrive. It was discovering its strength not in weapons or numbers, but in its mind, its ingenuity, and its ability to act with courage and creativity. The losing war had begun to shift, not because of battles or firepower, but because humans were finding new ways to live, work, and cooperate in the face of challenges. Each innovation, each successful adaptation, each small victory was a step toward a brighter future, a future where humans could rise above expectations and prove that their greatest strength lay within themselves. The princess stood on the observation deck, looking out at the galaxy and imagining the possibilities. The colonies were connected, their people inspired, and their networks resilient. The alien coalition might still hold numerical superiority, but humanity held something far more powerful: the ability to think, to adapt, and to create solutions no one else could anticipate. And in that moment, the princess felt a quiet certainty growing within her. The war was not yet won, but the path to turning it around had begun. Humanity was awakening to its potential, and she, the human princess, was guiding the spark that would light the way forward. The human princess stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, her eyes tracing the complex web of lights that represented human colonies across the galaxy. Lines of communication and supply stretched outward like threads in an intricate tapestry. For weeks, humanity had been coordinating, adapting, and innovating under her guidance. The colonies had grown resilient, the network strong, and the people confident. The war, once seeming hopeless, was beginning to change, but there was still much to do. Commander Raylan approached quietly, his footsteps soft on the metallic floor. "Your Highness," he said, "the colonies are reporting remarkable success. They are not just maintaining themselves, they are improving, experimenting, and sharing ideas with one another. The network is functioning better than we expected." The princess nodded, her gaze fixed on a distant star cluster. "It is as I believed. Humanity's strength has never been in weapons or numbers. It is in thought, creativity, and cooperation. Each colony is contributing, each person taking initiative, and together we are stronger than the sum of our parts. That is how the tide begins to turn." She moved to the central control panel, bringing up a holographic projection of the entire network. Dots representing colonies pulsed with activity, showing the flow of resources, communications, and innovations. Some were minor improvements: a new water recycling system, a better method for sharing supplies, but each one added to the overall strength of humanity. Other colonies had developed larger, more complex solutions, repurposing technology, creating mobile support units, and establishing networks for education and knowledge sharing across distances. "This," the princess said softly, almost to herself, "is the proof that humanity can rise above any challenge without a single weapon fired. The aliens can dominate in fleets and firepower, but they cannot predict the ingenuity of humans." Lieutenant Myra, standing at the edge of the room, watched her with admiration. "Your Highness," she said, "people are inspired. They believe in themselves again. Even in colonies that were abandoned, people are taking initiative. They are thinking ahead, finding solutions, and sharing them with others. This is incredible." The princess turned to Myra, a warm smile on her face. "It is, but it is not my work alone. The credit belongs to every human who dared to act, who dared to think differently, and who trusted one another. I only guided the spark. The people themselves have made it grow into a fire." The network of colonies was now operating like a living organism. In one sector, a farming colony had developed a system to transport excess crops to planets suffering shortages, using renewable energy to power their transport routes. In another, a mining settlement had devised a way to process raw materials more efficiently, sharing techniques with nearby colonies. Even remote outposts, previously isolated and struggling, were now part of a dynamic network that adapted to challenges in real time. The princess watched the flow of information, feeling pride and hope swell within her. She knew the alien coalition still held numerical superiority, but she also knew that numbers could not overcome adaptability, creativity, and collaboration. Humanity had discovered its greatest weapon: the ability to act as one, while thinking freely, solving problems, and learning continuously. One evening, she observed a simulation from a particularly distant cluster of colonies. The simulation represented a challenge the alien forces had created, an expected disruption in supply and communication lines. It was designed to test human resilience, and many had assumed the colonies would falter. But the simulation revealed something extraordinary. The colonies did not falter, they adapted. They rerouted supplies, created temporary energy grids, and used unconventional communication methods to relay information. Each adaptation inspired another, and the network adjusted like a living being, learning from its mistakes and improving with each iteration. The princess felt a quiet sense of triumph. It was not a victory in the traditional sense, but it was the foundation of one. Humanity had proven it could overcome adversity without resorting to violence, using intellect, cooperation, and creativity as their instruments of change. In the command center, Commander Raylan spoke. "Your Highness, the aliens are noticing the shift. Their intelligence reports suggest confusion. They cannot predict how humans are acting. They expected resistance but not innovation. They cannot anticipate our next move." The princess nodded. "Good, that is the point. We do not fight on their terms. We do not follow their expectations. We create our own path, and in doing so, we demonstrate the true power of humanity. She moved to a holographic display showing the flow of information between colonies. Each connection pulsed with energy, representing communication, adaptation, and problem-solving. The aliens had assumed humanity would operate as isolated units, easy to overwhelm. Instead, the colonies were connected, autonomous yet cooperative, constantly adjusting and improving. The princess decided it was time to implement the next phase of her strategy, a coordinated demonstration of human ingenuity that would send a clear message across the galaxy. She reached out to every colony leader through secure channels, explaining the plan in simple terms. Each colony was to implement a project showcasing its unique strengths, contributing to a unified demonstration of resilience and creativity. In one desert colony, engineers prepared a solar-powered water distribution system that could sustain the population indefinitely. In a mountainous settlement, scientists developed a system to store and share energy between colonies, using gravitational and kinetic resources. In a coastal colony, inventors designed automated transportation units that could carry goods efficiently across difficult terrain. Every project was independent, yet each contributed to the larger network. The Alien Coalition, observing these developments through their intelligence channels, grew increasingly frustrated. Their expectations of human predictability were shattered, and they could not anticipate the creative solutions emerging from each colony. The princess coordinated the efforts with precision, ensuring that every colony had the guidance and support needed, but allowing them the freedom to innovate. She understood that true strength lay not in rigid control, but in empowering people to act independently while maintaining unity. As the projects reached completion, the results were nothing short of remarkable. Colonies that had struggled with scarcity now had abundant resources. Communication networks were efficient, resilient, and adaptable. People across human space were empowered, confident, and engaged in continuous problem-solving. The alien coalition could no longer rely on assumptions or predictable patterns. The princess watched the network thrive, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment. Humanity had not merely survived, they had grown stronger, smarter, and more connected. The losing war had begun to shift, not through weapons or force, but through creativity, collaboration, and the courage to act. In the command center, Myra approached the princess. "Your Highness, the network is functioning at its peak. People are collaborating across sectors, sharing ideas, and adapting in ways we never imagined possible. It's incredible. Humanity has changed." The princess smiled, her eyes reflecting the lights of distant colonies. "It is incredible, but more importantly, it is proof. Proof that humans can rise above challenges, think creatively, and act with courage. Our strength is in our mind, our ingenuity, and our willingness to work together." Days passed, and the network continued to grow stronger. The alien coalition, unable to predict or control human actions, faced unexpected challenges at every turn. Supply lines were maintained despite disruption, communication channels adapted to new circumstances, and colonies thrived despite isolation. The humans had created a system that was not only resilient but evolving, capable of meeting any challenge with intelligence and cooperation. The princess often returned to the observation deck, gazing at the galaxy and reflecting on the journey. She thought of the people who had contributed, the farmers, engineers, scientists, and everyday citizens who had acted courageously and creatively. Each one had played a role in reshaping the course of the war, demonstrating that true strength came from people, not fleets or weapons. She realized that leadership was not about controlling every action, but about inspiring others to act, to think, and to innovate. By guiding the spark of human potential, she had ignited a flame that could not be extinguished, a flame that would continue to grow as long as people believed in themselves and one another. One night, as the princess looked at a particularly vibrant cluster of colonies, a message arrived from a distant settlement. The message was simple but profound. We are stronger together. We are learning, adapting, and thriving. Thank you for showing us the way. The princess felt a surge of pride and hope. Humanity had learned to rise above despair, to turn scarcity into opportunity, and to act as one while thinking independently. The network of colonies was not just surviving, it was thriving, demonstrating the power of creativity, cooperation, and courage. She turned to Commander Raylan, who had joined her silently. "The war has not ended," she said, "but humanity has already won something greater than victory in battle. We have proven that our strength lies within us, in our minds, our creativity, and our willingness to work together. That is a power no one can take away." Raylan nodded, understanding the truth of her words. "It is remarkable, Your Highness. Humanity has transformed and the galaxy has taken notice. The tide has shifted, not through weapons but through ingenuity and unity." The princess smiled, a quiet satisfaction filling her heart. She knew that challenges would continue, that obstacles would arise, and that patience and perseverance were still required. Yet she also knew that humanity had discovered something invaluable: the ability to thrive under any circumstance through creativity, collaboration, and courage. As the hours passed, reports continued to arrive from every corner of human space. Each report contained stories of adaptation, innovation, and cooperation. Colonies shared resources efficiently, communication flowed reliably, and communities acted with intelligence and initiative. The network had become self-sustaining, guided by the principles the princess had instilled, yet alive with the unique contributions of each settlement. And in that moment, the princess understood something profound. The war was no longer a battle of fleets or weapons. It was a demonstration of human potential, and humanity was rising to meet it. The losing war had shifted, not because of confrontation, but because humans had embraced their greatest strengths: creativity, courage, and cooperation. The princess stood on the observation deck, looking out at the galaxy and imagining the future. The colonies were connected, their people inspired, and their networks resilient. The alien coalition might still hold numerical superiority, but humanity held something far more powerful: the ability to think, to adapt, and to create solutions that no one else could anticipate. And in that moment, the human princess knew with certainty that the moment she had stepped forward had changed everything. The spark she had ignited in humanity was now a flame that could not be extinguished. The losing war was no longer lost. Humanity had begun to rise, guided not by weapons or force, but by the brilliance, courage, and ingenuity that made them extraordinary. The stars beyond the observation deck seemed to shine brighter that night, reflecting the energy of a people who had learned to believe in themselves. And the princess, standing at the center of it all, felt a deep, unshakable pride. Humanity had faced the impossible and, through thought, courage, and collaboration, had begun to change the galaxy forever. A losing war shifted the moment. The human princess stepped forward.